Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed the top gold, silver, and cryptocurrency stories for the week ended March 25th, 2018. Inspector General's report to be available online. We're going to discuss that. Barclays and Coinbase in a deal. We're going to discuss the implications of that story. Trump hits China with $60 billion in tariffs. China hits back with $3 billion of their own. Congress passes a $1.3 trillion omnibus bill. And the G20 met and said they will have no new laws on cryptocurrencies. Deep state concerns are widespread, and the silver solar outlook is bleak. And we're going to talk about how much gold and silver is actually in an intercontinental ballistic missile. 28 million Americans own cryptocurrencies, and 8% are planning on buying. American Express-backed cryptocurrency platform Abra launches. We're going to talk about, not ABBA, but Abra. We're going to talk about the implications of that deal. Fed raises interest rates, and Hong Kong-based cryptocurrency exchange Binance received a letter from Japanese regulators. We're going to briefly cover Mueller's shadowy past, including connections to Whitey Bulger, the Boston Mafia kingpin, an anthrax case, 9/11, and even Uranium One. Goldman Sachs actually touts gold over cryptos, and the gold-backed yuan is set to launch later tonight, and it's certain to be a game changer, so say the gold pumpers. All right, let's get to the gold and silver stories of the week. Now, one of the things I've always talked about with gold and silver, if they ever do rise and ever do take off and skyrocket, more likely it's going to be because of some external shock. Could have something to do with perhaps China's Ponzi scheme collapsing. Well, it looks like these tariffs are going to have somewhat of an impact on China, and gold and silver have been rising the past couple of weeks, especially since it became clear that Trump was going to impose these tariffs on China, though gold is still rising at a faster pace than silver. And you can see the gold-silver ratio is now close to 81-1. Now remember, I've been saying this for years now. What the silver pumpers don't understand, refuse to understand, or understand it and pump it anyway, is that the gold-silver ratio could be sustainable. There's no natural ratio that the gold-silver ratio has to go down to. Relative rarity is not the sole determinant, and often not even a major determinant in price and valuation. And we're seeing now gold is still rising at a faster rate. So gold closed the week up 2.5% at $13.46, and silver closed the week up 1.22% at $16.53. So we see during the past month, that the gold-silver ratio has risen from about 80.6 to 1 all the way to 81.6 to 1, or a gain on the month of 1.3%. Over the past year, silver has lost nearly 14% of its value versus gold. And over the last 5 years, here's your shocker, nearly 50%. During this entire time, the silver pumpers have been telling you, silver's indispensable to our lives. The gold-silver ratio's going to 16-1. No, 9-1. Silver's going to $150. Don't buy gold. Gold is so plentiful. It's in the Grand Canyon. Silver shield, silver on my head. All this stuff about silver has been the worst investment over the last 5 years. And yet, the same story is still out there that silver is the most undervalued asset on the planet. You just wait and see. Well, this is 5 years right here. If you had bought gold 5 years ago and you bought silver 5 years ago, your silver would be worth about half as much as your gold. I can only say you can listen to the same people over and over again telling you a narrative. But this is 5 years. This isn't like 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months. 5 years of being 100% wrong in relation to the gold-silver ratio. It's unsustainable at this level. It was here when it was unsustainable. It was here at 60-1 when it was unsustainable. It was here at 70-1 when it was unsustainable. It was here when it was 75-1 it was unsustainable. It's 81-1. It could go higher. It could go lower. But history is not on that side. There is no historic gold-silver ratio that must be regained. This is a 100-year chart. You show me where on this chart it ever hit 9-1. Show me where it ever hit 16 to 1. Right about there and right about there for about a second, and I want to boom right back up. So let's move on and talk about the week's stories. Now, this budget deal passed. Well, first of all, before we get into it, I just want to remind you that we've put out Moronica for the week already. Some funny stuff on there, so make sure you check that out on the BitChute and YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to BitChute. I have only 34 subscribers there. You never know when the YouTube might pull the plug. So you want to have a backup on BitChute, Smaulgld on BitChute. We've done the Moronica for the week. We also did a story discussing, we're not going to cover it here, what the appointment of deGenova as a lawyer and Bolton as the National Security Advisor mean to the Trump team. So please check out, those are on BitChute and YouTube, also on the Smaulgld website. Now, as to the budget, there's probably a lot more here than meets the eye. This week, there's a lot of stories where we're not only going to report on something happened, and we're a little unclear as to what it might mean going forward. So this is a very good podcast to catch up on, not just to know what happened last week, but really a lot of these stories you need to follow going forward. So surprisingly, Donald Trump allowed the Democrats and Republicans to pass a bill. And, well, when I say they're allowed to pass whatever they want, but he actually signed it, he didn't veto it, which basically bloated the deficit, had spending in there for everything, both whatever the Democrats wanted, whatever the Republicans wanted. The only thing they didn't have in there was a lot of funding for the wall. They did have the military funding that Trump wanted, but they basically funded Planned Parenthood, sanctuary cities. They really did not give Chuck Schumer's tunnel, and a lot of Republican. There's Republican and Democrat giveaways across the board. So basically, everyone was happy it passed, and Trump signed it. And of course, you have your holdouts, mostly other Republican holdouts. You had Rand Paul saying no one's read this thing. Donald Trump has said, I'm never going to sign another bill that no one's read. Now, this to me is shocking that people in Congress, this is, everyone thought Nancy Pelosi was a big moron for saying, yeah, we have to read the bill now after we have to pass it to find out what's in it. And we thought, well, isn't she stupid for saying that? But this appears to be how Congress acts. They just pass stuff, they don't read it. But my question is, if no one in Congress had time to read the 2,200-page bill, who the heck had time to write this thing? And I know you know the answer. It wasn't people in Congress who wrote it. So if somehow all these words get written, get placed in front of congressmen, and somehow they don't read it, they pass it, and they're comfortable with that. And then the president even said, I'm going to sign it. I'm sure he didn't read it either. Or maybe he did. But one of the things, I actually tried to read some of it, but me reading it isn't really going to change the course of human history. But I did want to look and see what was going on with the omnibus, with the Inspector Generals. Now, we know that the Inspector General's office, it has 1,700 employees. It's supposed to be somewhat of an eternal watchdog over the other agencies. And we do know that Horowitz is going to release his report on what happened, it looks like, on the Clinton investigation, the Trump investigation, the FISA warrants, all the stuff, the Mueller investigation into Trump-Russian collusion. And we're expecting that there's going to be some items in there that show some misdeeds by people at the highest levels of the FBI, the DOJ, and the State Department. One of the things I found in the budget, the one that recently passed, was the omnibus budget will fund Office of Inspector General to publish OIG reports on a public website. That leads me to believe that when this latest OIG report comes out from Horowitz, that it won't be something that the public is going to have to ask to see, that basically it'll be shown on a public website. So that, I think, could have the potential to be a pretty big bombshell, depending on what's in there. Now, apparently, some of it has leaked, and that's intentional, because Congress asked to see some of these documents. And as I mentioned in the deGenova and Bolton podcast, BitChute, YouTube, that I think a lot of what they haven't released, and they also won't release in the Inspector General's report, is because they have or planning criminal indictments against some of the people, some of the actors, the former investigators, who are now the investigatees in the Clinton email case and the Trump-Russian collusion case. But I think we'll get some greater clarity from the Inspector General's report when that comes out, and I think we can expect to see it if this budget funded a website that will expect to see it and be able to access it directly from the OIG's website. Now, there's some confusion over why Trump would sign the omnibus bill. It basically didn't give him what he wanted other than the military spending. It was a total betrayal of the concepts that the government is out of control. It spends too much money. We need to get some budget deficit. We need to get that under control. That did not happen with this deal. Now, some are saying that Trump, after the omnibus bill was signed, within hours he sent a letter to the Speaker of the House, basically carving out a particular provision of the budget and basically saying that he designates as an emergency requirement all funding so designated by the Congress in an act pursuant to Section 251B2A of the Balanced Budget Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985 for the accounts referenced in Section 705.8D. Now, I looked up that section. It looks like that is a section dealing with a lot of public health issues. I wasn't able to figure out how much money is in there, but I believe that under this letter that he sent, he's invoking an emergency authorization that he basically can reallocate and redirect or not spend that money. Unclear exactly what this is, but it may be that Trump passed this or allowed it to pass and didn't veto it because he knew he can get his wall into this. I'm not quite so sure that's the case, but there is some funding for the wall. I actually believe he passed it to get the military budget passed, and then I think this runs out in 6 months, is to play a lot more hardball in October in the run-up to the November elections so he can call out his people and everyone else will know who the people are, and maybe he can actually support candidates that would support a budget that isn't as out of hand and reckless as this one. Just something to keep an eye on. Not sure exactly why he signed that letter, but there has to be some strategy behind allowing such a budget to pass. Now, other people could just say he allowed it to pass because he's compromised and he doesn't care one way or the other. Could be too, I don't know. Now, more on regulation. This Binance, I think it's called Binance. I don't know what it's called. But anyway, it's one of the largest, if not the largest, cryptocurrency exchange in the world. It's based out of Hong Kong. Every time we have these stories about something happening with an exchange, the exchange is out of regulation, it's not doing things right, maybe it's not running the exchange right, and or regulators know that and they're after them, or just people just suspect that the exchange isn't running properly, or if they have technical issues, that generally impacts the price of the coins traded on the exchange, even though it doesn't indicate if there's anything wrong with the underlying assets that are being traded. It's the exchange that's having the problem. In this case, it was very interesting, and this is kind of a general commentary on exchanges. It seems still that the bulk of people that are trading cryptocurrencies are of the mindset that regulation is bad for cryptocurrencies. It means they can't just buy and sell and not pay taxes. And they worry about exchanges becoming more regulated. Now, on the flip side, I actually believe there's far more money in the general population that wants regulation, the people that just buy and sell shares on Fidelity, fund managers, people buy and sell shares with Schwab accounts, whatever the online brokerages are. I think those people and their money is far more numerous than those people who want to avoid regulation. And I think right now we're just in a middle period where it's not quite certain for the normal, like normies, people that just go about their business, don't even think about ending the Fed or freedom issues or lack of, people that just buy and sell stocks in their ordinary course of business, they're actually reluctant to buy and sell unless they know that everything is all buttoned down and they know exactly where the lay of the land is. And fund managers are clearly like that. They don't want to be invested in something where they're not sure of whether the exchange is going to be around, the exchange is going to get shut down, the exchange isn't properly regulated. However, once you have properly regulated exchanges, I believe you're going to have a real flood of money coming into the system. You may lose the initial funds, the people that don't want that regulation, don't want that oversight, worried about privacy. However, I think right now we're in the midst of a period where we're uncertain, and of course that's not good for prices of anything when you're uncertain. Now, what happened in Hong Kong, apparently, and the Nikkei Asian Review put out an article basically saying that they're going to shut down Binance, and the head of the company said, well, that's not true. We didn't hear anything about that. It says Nikkei Asian Review showed irresponsible journalism. We're in constructive dialogue with the Japanese FSA. We haven't received any mandates. Now remember, the Nikkei Asian Review is the one who said, game over, game changer. China sees new world order with oil benchmark backed by gold. So I'm suspicious of them now because of that story. But there seems to be some truth in it that they did get some type of letter from the Japanese FSA. But if you think about what's going on here, this doesn't reflect any change in Japanese outlook on cryptocurrencies. Japan has been seen as a country that has pretty much legalized cryptocurrencies. They are embraced by the Japanese government. There's a lot of crypto trading going on in Japan. What's happening here isn't that Japan has decided, change of course, we're against cryptocurrencies. No, what they're saying is that this Binance company is taking money, it's located in Hong Kong, from Japanese citizens, which means it's outside their scope of oversight geographically for regulation. However, because Japanese citizens are now buying on this exchange in Hong Kong, Japan's upset about it. But that shouldn't change. Doesn't reflect a change in Japanese policy. In fact, you'd expect them to. If they're going to have legal and regulated exchanges, they don't want some Hong Kong company taking Japanese money and not being subject to the same regulations. Now, I don't think that Binance can shut down, Japan can shut them down unless they're running some type of, I don't think they are. I think the issue is that the Japanese are sending money to Hong Kong. Now, if they're not and they're actually running it out of Japan, well, why should Binance be not regulated in the same respect that the other Japanese exchanges are? So I don't see this as anything other than creating uncertainty. And the reason it's uncertain is I just spent 5 minutes trying to explain it. Most people don't want to hear anything. I'm not saying that it's just that if they have to have something explained to them, then it's uncertain and they don't want to know, and therefore they'll just stay away. And I think that's what happens when people get a whiff of this. But just to do some more explaining about Japan, Yahoo Japan to launch cryptocurrency exchange in 2018, says report. Yahoo Japan planning to launch its own cryptocurrency exchange next year. So nothing has changed. Japan is very pro cryptocurrency. They believe it creates a wealth effect, but they are pro regulation. Japan is not a laissez-faire economy, but they have embraced cryptocurrencies. It looks like it's the place to do business, but you can't just go there and be unregistered and expect Japan to say, we like cryptocurrencies, we don't care that you're not registered. No, they're going to obviously go after unregistered exchange. And this is actually, finally, I think we got a good story out of Reuters. It said Japan regulators warns cryptocurrency exchange Binance over unregistered operations. That's not bad news. That's just basically saying we run a registered ship here. You can't just, it's Hong Kong-based cryptocurrency exchange. Binance for operating without registration. Now, Binance is saying that they're going to work with Japan to get into registration. That their business depends on. Deep state concerns, public troubled by deep state. Interesting poll that, it's well over 50% believe that there is such a thing as a deep state. So it was interesting to see that that isn't just something that conspiracy theory people believe, but basically it's kind of hard to, you can explain it without a conspiracy theory, that you have tens of thousands of employees in these agencies, and a lot of them stay there past the term of a president or they're appointees, and basically they're not elected, and they can, in many respects, do what they want. And it also seems that they're pretty adroit at avoiding congressional or executive branch oversight. So, in a sense, they somewhat do what they want. Okay, we're not going to cover the McCabe firing because we covered that in the Genoa blog podcast on Binance. But please check that out. There's a lot on McCabe. There's a lot on Genoa. There's a lot on Mueller. There's a lot on Sessions. I'll leave a link here. You can check out that podcast. Mueller, same thing. We're not going to cover him, but we do cover in that a lot of his shadowy past. And there's a lot been said about Mueller being a stand-up guy. But as you'll see in that YouTube BitChute, he was involved in Uranium One. He was the Attorney General during the Whitey Bulger case. There's some interesting facts about him, about the 9/11 planes flying into the buildings, Clinton email investigation, and an anthrax case he bungled, so please check that out. Now, tariffs. Tariffs are a big deal. And for the most part, people that are against Trump are against the tariffs, basically because they're against Trump. And then most free market people are against the tariffs because they're against tariffs. But I actually think this is it's not as simple as you're either pro-free market or you're against free market. I start with the concept of we don't have free markets, especially internationally. Those are not free markets. They are fraught with tariffs in every which direction. Countries subsidizing, like China, stealing intellectual property and then shipping it back in a finished product to the United States. That's not free trade. And then having tariffs that aren't reciprocal. So, for example, the United States may have to pay a tariff to send something somewhere overseas, but the United States doesn't charge the same tariff when similar products come into the United States. That's not free trade. Those are already restraints of trade that are set up, and in many instances, they disfavor the United States trade. So the first 60 billion, which is really nothing in the grand scheme of trade, of the tariffs that, and I think there's going to be more, that Trump placed on China, deal with, there are a lot of them where they're IP-type products where they basically aren't paying the IP licensing fee, and they're shipping their items back to the United States, and China's basically pocketing a windfall. So I think is that these tariffs don't indicate a view on trade, meaning from now on the United States is going to be a protectionist country. No, I think that they indicate, when Trump said trade wars are easy to win, I think what he was basically saying that the trade war isn't permanent. I think, that the trade war that may envelop could lead to a rebalance and eventually even greater free trade. It may serve as a way of eliminating some of the tariffs on U.S. goods. But, as some have rightly said, some quick conversations with Howard Malgrim and Lars Peliant, that if you're going to do this, which I don't think Trump is just doing willy-nilly, you have to have it mapped out in advance what your end game is. What are you trying to achieve by slapping a tariff on? What do you expect the reaction to be? What concession are you willing to give? Where do you want to end up after you place these tariffs? Do you want to eliminate all tariffs? Do you want to have reciprocal tariffs? Do you want to have some carve out for U.S. products to go in the other direction? Or do you really want to get maybe a rule, an agreement on intellectual property? And Howard Malgrim says in the past that he's worked in government, I believe in the Reagan administration, personally managed many U.S. negotiations with other nations, groups of nations, determining ultimate objectives in the end game was always my own starting point. It has to be. I mean, you can't just start a trade war without knowing what you want to do. You can't just slap tariffs on and not expect. Now, the Trump detractors will make it sound like Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He's just a madman. He's just putting tariffs on. There's been too many examples to show where Trump has done things where actually it became very clear why he did them. And I think this is another case. I don't think he's just putting tariffs on things just because he's out of his mind. But again, these tariffs are on Chinese products. It's not as simple as they send us products, we send them paper. We can't win this because we need China to send us cheap stuff. He didn't put a tariff on the cheap stuff that consumers buy, like refrigerators, and these are on items where China is clearly taking advantage. Now, it is advantageous for a country in some respects to get goods overseas that are made cheaper where the country, the United States, can't make them as cheap itself. That's good for consumers. One would say that's good all around. But it's not good if the products that are coming back and they're unfairly made cheap because they're not paying the intellectual property, and in some respect because they're also paying a much lower wage. But putting that aside, I think this tariff issue is possibly going to work out in favor of the United States, because from the limited research I've done on this, most of the trade agreements involve the United States having to pay tariffs going into countries at higher rates than the other way around. So if somehow these tariffs and trade wars reverse that, we may get a more balanced, I wouldn't say necessarily freer, international trade. All right, that's enough on tariffs. Now, China's been talking about, they're trying to say that they're able to handle any financial crisis. This is like subprime is contained. And every time I look at China, I see something, whether they're putting out social credit scores to determine whether you can get on a train or a plane in China, tightening grip on media with regulatory reshuffle. This is a very top-down. I don't know why it should be of any surprise to anyone, but when I see the gold bugs, and I call them gold bugs because that's all they seem to care about. China's going to end the multipolar world. They've had enough. They're going to crush the dollar, end dollar hegemony. And the only reason they're for that is because they want the gold price to go up. They really, I don't think, if they thought it through, would think, well, it's better that China does these things and that they actually favor a totalitarian society. But when they cheer on whatever China does, it seems to be. The other thing is they cheer on China without realizing that China is nowhere even near a sound money, a free market society. Basically, they're running a massive Ponzi scheme with state-owned enterprises being lent money by state-owned banks for projects that have no possibility of making a profit. They're there just to generate GDP. They're there just to generate jobs and projects to keep people busy. And by the Chinese own publicly released data, 20, 30, 40% of the loans are bad. And what do they do when they see a bad loan? The People's Bank of China tells the state-owned bank, lend them more money, or forgive the debt, or extend the terms. And if you extend the terms, change it from debt and call it equity, because it's never, all types of recharacterizations. And then you expect the Chinese yuan to somehow be accepted as a game changer ending the dollar, when China will have to. And again, if you're going to, more power to, they're going to run a top-down economy and they're going to run totally controlled. Well, they have to keep available to them capital controls, which why would you want to have a reserve currency where there's capital controls? They also have to reserve to themselves the right to devalue the yuan if they believe it's in their nation's best interest. So I just don't see how anyone can even think that the yuan is going to crush the dollar. I mean, over the last 5 years, the amount of yuan used in international transactions has actually dipped from like 1.9% to 1.2%. The trend isn't headed. It's the same with this gold-silver ratio's got to come down. The trend isn't working in the direction where China is actually positioning the yuan. Well, they're going to have the gold-backed yuan, the gold exchangeable on the... No, they're not. That has never been announced. There's not going to be a gold-backed yuan. There's not going to be a gold exchangeable for oil producers on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. All they're going to have is a part-time market in trading an yuan-denominated oils futures contract. That's it. But this is the game changer for gold. And, this story will fade in a month or two. And there'll be another gold pumper story. Everyone will forget about this. And we'll see what the next one is. Now, China's not happy about the tariffs that we know about. Now, Venezuela is in the news again. Now, they came up with the petro. And that was another way that the BRICS and the countries that are fed up with the dollar, we're going to end dollar hegemony. Because Venezuela was they did launch a petro. It's backed by gold, backed by oil. And they're accepting Chinese yuan as payment for their oil. Every channel that mindlessly repeats these stories. And they get thousands and tens of thousands of views. Because people have been conditioned to think anything that's bad for the dollar, well, it's good for gold. And I want to see this on as many channels as possible. I love this story. China is going to crush the dollar. Gold is going to skyrocket. Gold-backed yuan. Game changer. End of the petrodollar. That's all you have to do. You put out a YouTube on that. You're going to get 10,000 visits. Same people going from site to site, reading the same regurgitated story, not realizing that the petrodollar is no longer what keeps the dollar afloat, not realizing that Saudi Arabia actually produces less oil today than the United States produces, not realizing that the United States is a major oil exporter to China, major natural gas exporter to China. They don't know any of that. They don't want to know that. They want to hear China's going to crush the dollar. They're going to price everything in yuan, and then the Saudis, everybody's going to go out and buy gold with their yuan. Okay. Of course they are. Now, this executive order from Trump basically said you can't trade in the petro if you are a U.S. citizen. So, not that anyone would want. Maybe somebody would. I don't know. Game changer. Excuse me. So, Venezuela has the 4th largest gold mine in the world, they have announced. Okay. They also have, I believe, the world's largest oil reserves. And yet they have to import gasoline from Russia, because their socialist Maduro does not know how to best maximize his country's resources. Cryptocurrencies. Now, this is interesting. Studies show millennials favor Bitcoin over traditional banking. This is a very important point. I was looking at not my demographics, but my, whatever they are, my analytics on Google's YouTube. And if you can believe them, which I have no reason not to believe them, about 99% of the Smaulgld audience is guys. No surprise there, though it's a little high. I thought it maybe be 95%, not 99%. But that most of the audience is over 40, 45. Why is that important? Well, because Smaulgld built this audience on gold and silver. Well, millennials don't really care about gold and silver. Look at these hipsters here. See, they don't really care about it. And that's why all of the comments about gold, skyrocket, gold's money, period, silver's going to go up. That's all age-based. And it also means, I guess, that the older people didn't teach their children, who are the millennials, about gold and silver, because they don't seem to give a hoot about it. They are all into these cryptocurrencies. So, I mean, if you only look at the wave of the future, that's what they think is money, and they don't like gold and silver. It's inevitable over the next 5 to 10 years that there'll be more and more digital transactions and more use of cryptocurrencies. Unless something changes, it seems that that's how they view the world. Now that has consequences. Not just a lot of them they believe in socialism, they believe in gun control. So it's not just about cryptocurrencies, but it's also about their entire world view. And they're fans of Bernie Sanders, the 1%. All right, let's move on from cryptocurrencies. Lots going on with cryptocurrencies. Hardware wallets being developed. There's just so much going on. There's so much development, so much money, so many resources being thrown at cryptocurrencies. Here, Bitcoin Cash to any phone in the world without the internet. all these innovations, and most of the innovations generally going to be done by people under 50, under 40 years old. That's just what innovation is. When you get older, you do less innovation and more reflection on what's happening. And worse, you become a reactionary. You just rail against innovation. You say, it's no good. In my day, we didn't have this kind of stuff, this newfangled internet, this newfangled cryptocurrency stuff. But that's where we're headed. Look, these kids, even here, college students using student loans to invest in Bitcoin. I think it was 20% said they had used their college. 20% of people over 50 are clearly don't even own Bitcoin or any of these things. And here's people who shouldn't be spending that college money. They're spending it on Bitcoin. All right, Burble. One of the things I do follow now with the cryptocurrencies is it used to be Bitcoin dominance, used to be like 70, 80%. But now it looks like it's the top 5 coins that are in the dominance: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Bcash, and Litecoin. And I think they're the ones that have already passed the ICO test. The SEC is not after, though, that there is no leader of these coins, or if there's a leader, there's not a company other than Ripple. Bitcoin, Ethereum, it does have a leader with Buterin and Litecoin, but has a leader with Charlie. But Bcash is a leader, Roger Ver, but they don't own the company. These are just currencies. So these ones are probably not going to have the same scrutiny as these ICOs that are out there promising, like BConnect and others promising the world. And I think as those ICOs fade away or they become harder to come by, until they become regulated and then brought to market by Goldman Sachs and Silicon Valley, the money that flows into the system, like the cryptocurrencies, is going to flow into these top 5, maybe the next 10, 5 or 6 down. But you can see clearly the market cap is by between 75 and 80% of the burbles. Now, interesting, Abra. This is a very important development, only if Abra gets off the ground. But Abra is backed by, they say it's a Fidelity-backed company. It's got investment from one of the telephone companies. It's got investment from American Express. And basically, it's a way of people investing in cryptocurrencies. It's like an exchange on your wallet, on your iPhone in an app. And it allows you to, using Bitcoin and Litecoin, to gain exposure to 20 other cryptocurrencies, other fiat currency pairs. And if it does take off, that is a big deal. And the other big deal about it is it's running off a Litecoin smart contract, which would make, when if Litecoin ever attains something of parity with Bitcoin, and it's a very similar coin, it's just not going to go through the minor differences here, but that would be a big deal for Litecoin, because Litecoin is priced right now at $160 and Bitcoin is priced at $8,500. So there might be some de-widening of that gap. Anyway, there's some links here you can read about Abra. I think it could be, they say it could be a big deal. I agree. But again, it isn't a big deal because the number of people on the platform that are using it are low. What's interesting also was the guy said the people who use this, but he didn't say how many people use it, are generally tend to be over 40. Now, one of the things that will make cryptocurrencies become adopted is you have to make it easier. You can't have this where you have to figure it out and what's this and what's a wallet and how do I... You have to make it like turning on and off a light switch. People don't know what goes on behind the light switch. They just turn it on, the light works. They don't need to understand electricity. They don't need to become an electrician. They don't need to go to electricity seminars. They just turn the light on and it works. Same with everything else. Your refrigerator, they don't need to know that there used to be a Freon tube in there and now there's not. Same thing with these cryptocurrencies, but I will say there is a tremendous amount of work, effort, innovation, and money being thrown at precisely that. Lightning swaps, off-chain swaps, atomic swaps, decentralized exchanges, platforms like Abra. So when there's all this money there and you have American Express, and we're going to see in a second, Barclays Bank, Fidelity Investment involved, and you're going to get Goldman Sachs, you're going to get the big banks involved. They're going to want to, there's cash in this, as we talked about in the podcast I did on BitChute and YouTube about the mobsters. They may look at this and say they don't want to get involved. It's a threat. They're going to get involved. The money's too big. It's too big of a temptation. And they're going to want to get in. They're going to want to control it. By the way, Aber was Charlie Lee's one unexpected surprise. His merchant processor prediction is, or promise has come true. And he's still looking for a popular online wallet and goods trading platform. So these could be more further good news for the space and Litecoin. Here's a town. I'm running a mining operation. They agreed in outside of somewhere in Canada. Well, there's going to be $100 million Bitcoin mining operation in this town called Medicine Hat. Again, states, banks, countries are backing this cryptocurrency stuff, whether you like it or not. See, that's where I think many people over 40 have it in their head that somehow if you report on it, you're a traitor, you lack integrity. I don't make the rules here. I'm reporting on what's happening. I'm not even cheerleading it. It really doesn't matter what I think, but my thinking is involved in analysis, not in trying to influence anyone's investment decision, try to influence anyone's personal behavior. I don't care what you do, because I can't, even if I did, there's nothing I can do to make you do what I want to do other than, I guess, make up stories, lie to you, and I don't know. Anyway, that's not what I do. I report and I analyze, and that's what I hope you come here to hear. I'm not here to tell you gold's going to the moon, Bitcoin's going to the moon, Litecoin's going to the moon. I'm here to tell you what's happening. I'm here to tell you, not just what's going up, but what's going down. All right, so here I say, if people have to do research, go to conferences to understand Bitcoin, it's not going to get much further. But if it's made so that people can use it with ease, it will be a big winner. And that's what I believe, and I think it will be. As long as that happens. As long as people are throwing time, effort, and money at it, and they're not being thwarted. And so far, there's nothing to indicate that the Western regulators are trying to stop that innovation. They're trying to harness it. All they're trying to do, what everything I've seen, is eliminate fraud. Now, some people say, oh, the whole thing is a fraud. Okay, well, that's not true. All right. Bitcoin spikes after BOJ's Kuroda praises cryptocurrency. See, that's the point. Japan's not after cryptocurrencies. They don't want to shut it down. And Zero Hedge made this point a while back that there's a Bitcoin wealth effect. They were trying to get inflation. Nothing better than Japanese people with Bitcoin gains running around spending it. Spending is what these big banks, Keynesians want. They want spending. Rather than hand out the money, let them spend the crypto gains. Now, here's the story. Bitcoin too big to fail banks. Bitcoin Exchange reaches deal with Barclays. Now, think about Barclays. It's one of these huge UK banks. Now, the way Coinbase have been working in the UK for a while now is they didn't have this e-money license. UK banks wouldn't deal with them, so that you'd have to buy your cryptocurrencies on Coinbase and then exchange for euros. You had to go through an Estonian bank. Well, this deal now, Barclays, huge bank, allows them just to open up a bank account and deal in pounds. It's a big deal. It's just another example of how the banks want in on this. They're going to try to co-opt it. You see, if Coinbase or any of these other large exchanges become the place where the average normie goes and buys their cryptocurrency, sells their cryptocurrencies, pays their taxes, you can have all this other innovation off-chain and privacies and decentralized. Yeah, people will go there too. But the banks realize that if they can capture and get the sign-off from the regulators that this is the way to do it, and this is legal, and this is fine, and you're totally in compliance, they're going to get the bulk of the money that way. Yeah, you're always going to get the anarcho-capitalists, the anarchists, the libertarians. They may not want to trade on these exchanges. They might want to go off-chain, off-swap, Monero, all those other privacy-type things. But for the most part, and they'll exist, and I'm not saying that they'll go away, but they will be the ones that will be more suspect by the authorities and the regulators. All right. And remember, Fidelity Investments, I reported on this back in August 2017. They've already set up where you can go into your Fidelity account and view your Coinbase account. So Fidelity Investments, largest non-public broker in the United States and possibly in the world, is also looking at this as a way of making money. Also, just a quick point on cryptocurrencies versus ICOs. There's a huge difference between a cryptocurrency and ICO. I view cryptocurrencies like gold and silver. They just are. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm just saying for that purpose, they don't require a company to do anything. They are. Now, Bitcoin and Litecoin and the cryptocurrencies do require an infrastructure for them to work. But the point being is there's no company that's going to benefit. There's nothing you can say about them to make them go up. They're not going to do anything. They just are. ICOs are more like mining shares, where someone has to do something. They have to produce a result. The ICO company or the DAO has to become successful for those tokens to be worth anything. Similarly, a mine actually has to produce something. So when you pump an ICO, that's more what the SEC is concerned about. You can pump gold, but you can't say, well, gold's going to do this, or gold's going to provide a dividend, or gold's going to split. It's not going to do anything. And Bitcoin and Litecoin and silver, they're not going to do anything either. So regulators are less concerned about it. If you think about it, gold is not regulated because all you could do is make up stories about it, like gold backed yuan. But you really can't make up a story that gold's going to do anything other than go up in price or go down in price, because it's not going to do anything. That's the whole point of it. It's an inert metal. Same with silver. It's not going to do anything. You can claim someone's going to use it, or sovereign-sized gold buy in 10 days. You can make up all silver shortage, but you can't say that it's going to do anything. And that's why, by analogy, the SEC is more interested in regulating gold mining pumpers and ICOs than just gold touts, silver touts, Bitcoin touts, Litecoin touts, Monero touts, whatever. Because those are totally different animals. Now here's the G20 basically. We had heard Draghi say a couple of weeks ago, I'm no interested in regulating a Bitcoin. And G20 met and they said they're not interested either. So now they give different reasons why they're not. It's not big enough. It doesn't matter. It's not our job. Maybe they just don't know how to. But the point is, not being a big deal to regulate, and we're seeing that countries themselves are doing their own regulation. And that's, I guess, how it should be. See, G20 bankers reject regulating cryptocurrencies. This is one that's interesting. I'll leave you the link here. You can check it out. This is some Goldman Sachs. I think it's a promoted tweet. She's talking about why cryptos don't solve any problems we have, you know, because we got banks. So what do we need cryptocurrencies for? I guess she's missing the point there. But she actually spoke highly of gold. Now, that's strange that Goldman Sachs would be touting gold over cryptocurrencies. But I think they really just don't know how to deal with cryptocurrencies. They want in on it. They're not sure if they want in on it. They never talk highly of gold, but it's interesting that she said something nice about gold. I did cover during the week that Russia added another huge pile of gold in February, another 800,000 ounces. Alabama approved sales tax exemption for gold, silver, bullion starting in June. And India is still stuck with their old gold policy. Turkey, for those people who love to cheer on whatever country, no matter what their policy, no matter how they are, as long as they got gold, well, Turkey you can be a proud supporter of because their imports of gold surge. They know what's coming. They want to end dollar hegemony. Go Turkey, join up with China in the BRICS and crush the dollar. Make my gold go higher. Look at that. Turkey understands gold. They're smart. They get gold. They're part of the East. All right. Now this one is strange. This is CNBC, half propaganda. Indians are starting to ditch gold and property investments for stocks and mutual funds, survey shows. Yes and no. I mean, I'm not in India. I'm not there. I don't know. But generally what happens when you have a society, as they get wealthier, they tend to want more liquid assets. So, for example, you're an Indian farmer. Just imagine this. I could be wrong, but let me take you through it. I'm an Indian farmer. I'm relatively subsistence level. Some years I have a good monsoon, I have some extra cash. I'm not putting it in rupees. I'm not holding it in rupees. I'm not putting it in the stock market. I'm going to buy a couple of bangles for my wife and maybe a bar to stick in a drawer somewhere. All right, well, I do that every now and then. Some years I do well, some years I don't. And over the course of time, now my grandkids may get 3 bars and 18 bangles. Well, those kids grow up, and maybe one of them works on the farm, the other 3 go work somewhere else. 2 of them they work in a call center, then one of them becomes a manager in the call center. Well, now he's not only, in addition, does he have a few bangles, and he's got more cash. So, of course, he's going to put money in the stock market and mutual funds. He's not going to open up a vault and stack gold to the ceiling now that he's making decent money and he's making more disposable money. He probably is not going to ditch his gold, but he's going to diversify his portfolio, as you would expect. So, I don't know. I haven't seen any dropping in gold demand in terms of the imports, and imports into India are pretty much the proxy for gold demand because they don't have any domestic mining production. So, I don't know. I don't think they're ditching gold. I think that they are just diversifying. But we'll see. Somebody here called BS on that. I agree. They're diversifying. Now, gold rising on tariff terminals. This is a point I've been making for years. Gold more likely to soar if China's bubble bursts due to strain of tariffs or their own Ponzi scheme bursting than because of any nonsense gold-backed yuan, gold convertible yuan story. This one was interesting. Not to me, but this was in Kitco. Silver solar demand doesn't look very bright. This is something I've been saying, just looking at the data. Same with, you hear the silver pumpers. Silver's so useful. Electronic use. It's in every electronic. And I look at the Silver Institute numbers. They could be wrong, but assuming they're not, they show that silver demand for electronics since 2010 has gone down every year, from 310 million ounces a year demand to 233 million ounces. And the point is, just because you make more electronics or you use solar panels more doesn't mean the amount of silver that you need rises. So, for example, with solar panels, they've learned to use less silver in the silver paste. In many instances, they're innovating and testing with silver nanoparticles or even aluminum. So even though more solar is going up, each panel, like from 10 years ago, they use far less silver than they used to use. Same with electronics. Also, I'm not trying to downplay silver, but the point is, when you say it's so useful, there comes a point where anything, no matter how useful it is, like gold would be very useful in a lot of things. I just don't use it because it's too expensive. But you can switch to graphene for electronics. You don't need to have. So you can use copper too, just because silver is better conductor of electricity than copper. But for cheap stuff, you can use copper. The point being is that nothing is destined to skyrocket. Nothing is destined to go much higher just based because something is useful, because, oh, copper, tin, zinc, all are useful. That doesn't mean they have to go to the moon just because someone has a channel saying that they will. Here, silver nanoparticles in clothing washout. There's the famous, oh, but silver's great. They put it in yoga pants so that they don't smell. Yeah, very little. Silver nanoparticles. But then this becomes a human health hazard. Not me. This is what they're saying. Because you get these nanoparticles, they wash out in the clothing, and they cause a problem. So maybe they might even ban that limited use right there. I just like to look at all sides. I don't just look at only the positives of silver, because actually it's moronic. When you see the price is not reacting for a decade, and you insist that your thesis is correct, maybe it's not. And if your thesis is just its manipulation, then you've got an easy solution. Do I think the manipulation will continue? If yes, then everything else doesn't matter. Or if you think it's not just manipulation, but maybe there's a reason silver doesn't go higher, how can you insist that it must go higher when every year it goes down or it doesn't go any higher? You have to look at the data that's available and make your determination. You can't just keep clinging to a belief. I guess you can do whatever you want. All right, silver and an ICB. I promised to tell you how much is in one of these. Now, Russia's aging ICBs are to be scrapped for gold and silver. All right, so they're going to scrap these and going to take out whatever's in there. So they say there's 42 kilograms of silver and 1.8 kilograms of gold in each missile. So I calculated that to be about 1,350 ounces of silver in each ICBM. That's about 2 monster boxes and almost a third monster box of 350 ounces. So you're talking about, it's a decent amount of silver, but it's not game-changing. It's worth about $22,000 at $16 an ounce. Now, the amount of gold in an intercontinental ballistic missile is about 57 ounces. That's a lot. And that's worth about $76,000 at the price of $13.25. It's about $100,000 in an intercontinental ballistic missile. Nice piece of change. Here, Bitcoin pumper. Price of Bitcoin will soar by 300,000 by the end of experts predict. What does that mean? Experts predict Bitcoin's going to soar 300%. Jack Dorsey, another expert. Bitcoin will become the world's single currency. And yes, of course it will. In 10 years. Now, there was a cross-pumping I saw. I love this one. This guy was saying that the gold-backed yuan was going to... Okay, I know what he was saying. That when the gold-backed yuan comes out, which it's not, but when it comes out, the United States is going to counter with a Bitcoin-backed dollar. Now, there's your cross-pumping. But you got this gold derangement syndrome. You got Bitcoin derangement syndrome. People believe that the world revolves around Bitcoin, Litecoin, gold, silver. It doesn't. Here, are we days away from the next gold pumper story? Is China days away from killing the petrodollar? These types of stories are guaranteed to get you hundreds of thousands of views and people shaking their head. Yeah, this is it. This is it. Gold's going higher. End of the petrodollar. End of dollar hegemony. End of dollar hegemony. End of dollar multipolar world. These narratives are so ingrained in people. They don't look at anything other. They just see it. They just pop from channel to channel and listen to the same nonsense and dig their heels. And it's the end of the petrodollar. Uh-oh, not again. This one was saying that the dollar dies tomorrow. Well, it's in a couple hours, I guess, when the gold-backed yuan, gold convertible on the Shanghai gold, the gold triangle, all going to game change tonight. Go out and buy your gold before it's too late, before it runs out, and you won't have gold at any price. And China and Turkey will rule the world because they've got gold. Load of Union gold went missing during the Civil War. Lots of stories on this. I haven't found one that actually determined what happened, whether they actually got the gold or not, but apparently Union gold went off the wagon somewhere and was buried somewhere in Pennsylvania. We'll have to find it. More gold found in the Netherlands. And that about does it. I want to thank you very much for listening. Please remember to subscribe to this channel, or if you're interested in donating to Smaulgld via PayPal, Bitcoin, Litecoin, or becoming a Smaulgld patron. Thank you very much.